our secrets lie in the border fires and the humming wires. Yeah, man, you know you're never coming back. Across the square, across the bridge, across the mills, past the stacks. On a gathering storm comes a tall, handsome man in a dusty black coat with a red right hand.
So Thomas Jane, thanks very much for your time. Been a big fan for a long time.
Thanks.
You're a Maryland boy.
Yeah, I was born in Baltimore.
I know, obviously you played Mickey Mantle, my team, the Yankees. But
Right.
were you a sports fan at all growing up?
I grew up playing football in high school. I didn't do much of high school, but I think I started in the 4th or 5th grade and played high school up until I left. I think I may have played a bit of 10th grade. Junior varsity, and then I left Maryland. I went to India.
Oh, the Bollywood. So when you were schooling, you never really got into the drama and thought, I'm going to do acting. It kind of just happened. Well, you were already taking acting classes, weren't you?
Well, I had a great teacher in high school named Mr. Brodsky. Now, I wasn't in the acting class. I was building the sets because I hung out after school. It was a way to, sort of get out of the house, and we'd build the sets for whatever production that they were doing. I think we built the sets for Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, I think is what they were doing. And building those sets, I would watch the kids rehearsing. And the guys that I was hanging out with were all artists and craftsmen and, art class. So I guess I was playing football on the one hand, but I was also hanging out with the artists and the nerds on the other hand. And I was always kind of cutting up and playing practical jokes and stuff. And the guys that I was building the sets with kind of conned me into auditioning for the next play, which was a vaudeville thing. It's a great sort of a whole vaudeville review, and so I auditioned for this play. It was the old classic where slowly I turned, inch by inch, step by step I crept upon him. It's a great little bit, and got that part, and we did that performance in high school. I think that was in 9th grade, and fell in love with theater and acting, sets, directing, the whole thing. It was just like, this is a new world. Always been a big fan of film before that, and I never really put the two together, theater and film, because film, to me, growing up in Maryland, in kind of the boonies, we grew up in a suburban neighborhood that had been, converted from an old farm. They were buying up farms and building houses on them, and so growing up out in the farmland, film was, I didn't even conceive that people had created these things. They were like magical gems, like prisms that you'd look into and like peer into another world. They were like wormholes. But I dropped out of high school and I started studying with a guy named Ralph Tabakin in Bethesda, Maryland, who had a acting, it was called the Maryland Academy of Dramatic Arts, and it was above a liquor store in Bethesda. And Ralph Tabakin is in all of Barry Levinson's films. So he'd run off. I think when I was studying with him, he just came back from doing the young Sherlock Holmes, where he had a part, and he would tell us stories about movie making films. And it was fascinating to me, the way he would describe showing up and working with the director and the camera and the lights and everything. And then he invited us to the Baltimore screening of the young Sherlock Holmes. And I saw Ralph on film. And that's when I kind of put it together, that this was a career, that this is something that you could do. And I told Ralph, I said, I want to do that. And he gave me a lot of great advice. Before he died, he actually came out to LA, and I started working as an actor, and it was really great to take him out to dinner and, kind of say, he was proud.
And he was the one that told you about the Bollywood audition?
He did, yeah. I was sweeping floors at a hardware store, and Ralph called me up on the payphone at the hardware store, and he said that these Indians had come to town and they were looking to make a film in Washington D.C. and St. Louis, and they were gonna rent an RV and drive up to New York City and drive all over the country and make this movie, and they were looking for a white kid to be the lead in this kind of Romeo and Juliet type story. And the white kid falls in love with an Indian girl, and the parents fight, and so the kids run away. And then they run off to India, and then true epic Bollywood style, they flash forward 20 years. The couple is 40 years old, and they have this teenage daughter. And the teenage daughter has been turned against us by a vindictive grandfather, the father of my wife, and she runs away, and we chase her to India.
You had to play all the guy too, right? At 16
yeah, so it was great. Yeah, and I had to learn Telugu, so I had this coach teach me this whole speech in Telugu, and that was the director's message about how we're all the same, and the world needs to get along, and all that stuff.
Basically, your first film project, you were the star.
Yeah, I guess so.
The Indian film, they really get it done.
Oh, it was great. It was like going to 1940s Hollywood. It was like 30s, 40s Hollywood style, with the old cars and the palm trees. I mean, they had the whole like Hollywood thing right there in Bollywood, and they had some of the best sound systems in the world. Like their recording studios are the best in the world. They made the best soundtracks. They'd have hundreds of musicians come in and watching that was really amazing. Watching these Indian musicians record the soundtrack live to the film. They just run the film and start playing. That was really cool.
I know they wanted to keep you there, but have you ever thought about what if you had stayed a little longer even?
Well, I did another.
You not have a long career there or anything, but
no. They called me Mr. Tom, and I think that's how I was billed, as Mr. Tom. I'm not sure. I never learned how to read Telugu, but they bought me an apartment, a car, a driver, and I did another film for them while I was there, a little part in another film, and they wanted me to stay. They said, "We want you to be the white boy in our movies."
In the Indian film industry.
Yeah. And I was in love with this girl back in Maryland. She was my girlfriend, and I would send her these packages. I'd get these empty film canisters, and I'd pack it full of Indian cigarettes and crazy stuff, just all the strange stuff I found on the street, and I'd pack it up and I'd send them to her. I was there for about 5.5 months, and that was long. I turned 17 when I was in India, and when you're 17, like 6 months is quite a while. I was ready to leave. And I thought, maybe I could do this in the States, and they didn't pay me, of course, Indian producer, great guy, but didn't pay me. So he said, okay, I ran out of money, but that RV that we bought to take everybody around the country, you can have it.
It was already here.
Yeah, so when I flew back from India, they gave me this RV, And you know, being 17, we got a lot of use out of that, me and my pals. You know, I barely smuggled in some Indian Ganja on the plane,
Wow.
which I ended up smoking on the plane. You could smoke in those days on the planes. And me and my pal, who was a medical student in India, he was going to become a medical doctor in India so that he could go back to the States and then enroll in a decent medical school and become an American doctor. So me and him would hang out in the medical school and play with the bones and stuff, and we had a great time. And we bought this incredible Indian Ganja, which I decided to bring back with me. And I had on bell-bottom, red and white striped pants, barefoot, a beard, long hair. I mean, I went full, you know, I went full white guy who goes to India, and a tie-dye shirt.
Yeah.
And me and my pal snuck into the bathroom, and we smoked this joint. Of course, we didn't know that, or we didn't understand that the, you know, filtration system, you know, it's canned air, it's recycled. So within 10 minutes, the entire plane smelled like dope.
Yeah.
And they're looking around, people looking around. I wonder who was that guy that was smoking that pot. So the customs guys or the FBI or whoever the hell they were waiting for us when we got off the plane in New York City. And I spent about 6 hours, you know, with them going through every single piece of my luggage, coming back from India. And I had the pot right here in this pocket.
Wow.
And, you know, they never,
Did you know that it was there?
Yeah, yeah.
Midnight Express right there.
They, you know, they strip searched me. They took apart my shoes. I'm standing in this white room, so in the bowels of a New York City, you know, they've got, I mean, that, I knew more about that airport than you'd ever want to know. They have secret doors and secret corridors and interrogation rooms and white rooms with metal tables, and I was in there and all my shit's all over the place. 5 guys are going through it. This guy says, take your clothes off, you know, and he empty your pockets, and I'm emptying my stuff, and I reach, and I had this pot wrapped up in newspaper, and the Indians would do these really intricate balls of newspaper. They put the pot in, I had 3 or 4 of them, and I put it down on the table. I reached in my pocket, I grabbed a matchstick and some lint, and I put that down on the table. I know the guy's going like this, he goes like that. I reach down, I throw down the matchstick, pick up the pot, and put it back in my pocket.
Jeez.
And now, either I was really lucky or somebody in there was really nice, but they let me go. So we drove around in the RV and smoked Indian Ganja, and the RV broke down on the New Jersey Turnpike, and I called up a guy who offered me a '69 Camaro convertible as trade. He goes, I'll take the RV, I'm going to fix it, and I'll give you this Camaro. So that was great.
Was that kind of the sign that you should use that and just take off to the West Coast?
That's exactly what I did. I packed it up and drove across the country and went to San Francisco for a little while and got into trouble there and went to school.
So you didn't know people here on the West Coast?
No, I didn't have any family or any friends out here. And I was 17. I turned 18 in San Francisco, and I drove down to L.A. I turned 19 in L.A. You know, I had
and probably not a lot of money either, right?
No. I had a couple $100 in my pocket. I sold the Camaro. I think I got $800 for this '69 convertible Camaro, all original, with a primer paint job. It was primer black, and I stayed in a hotel that's no longer there, over on Western, and you know, this flop houses. I slept on park benches. When I ran out of money, so then I sold my Camaro, and I took that $800 and I gave it to an acting school, where I then studied for the next couple of years, And then that's where I met some really good people.
But at first, you were sleeping in your car and stuff, right?
Sleeping in the car. I had a few bucks, which I turned over to the hotel, but that ran out after a couple of weeks. So then I slept in my car. Was bumming around Hollywood. There at that time, which was, 86, something like that. At that time, there were a lot of runaway kids that had come to LA, and because it was warm, and there was a whole thing. I mean, thousands of kids were coming out, and the punk rock thing had happened, but it was still sort of the last dying remnants of the punk rock scene, which was changing into something else at that time. But some of the old clubs were still around, and there were a lot of homeless punk rock kids, running around, and I fell in with those kids, and we'd hang out at Okie Dog on Santa Monica Boulevard, and we'd hang out at Motel Hell, which was up on Hollywood Boulevard. It was an abandoned hotel. Some bad stuff went down in that hotel, but we were kids, and I think somebody burned it down. It was something happened. Everybody got kicked out. And Then I fell in with some other guys in an apartment building. By this time, I'd sold my Camaro and given this money to the acting studio, and gotten on. Went downtown and got on to the welfare, or whatever they call it, the voucher. They give you a voucher. Right. So you take the voucher and you take it to these old crappy hotels that were built in like 1910 that are still down there, the Baltimore Hotel. I can't remember the other ones, but they'd put you in these little rooms, and they had to move you out every 29 days, because in California, if you stay longer than 30 days, you establish residency, which means that it would take you 3 to 6 months to kick you out, which, believe me, I did a few times in other apartment buildings. But these rooms were like prison cells. They'd take out the carpet, they'd put one little cot in the corner, no sink, the bathroom was down the hall, and there'd be sort of like a shiny piece of aluminum as a kind of a mirror. I think my room had a sink in it, that was it. And that was rough, People would stick a screwdriver in your neck and, hold you up for your food stamps down there. It's tough, Still is.
But for a young teenage guy, were you prepared for this type of adventure? Obviously it took some guts. And first of all, did you have in your mind that this is eventually going to lead to acting in the movies, or were you just looking for something different?
I was looking for adventure. I mean, I was a voracious reader as a kid. I read all of Hemingway. I read all of Steinbeck. Those are my two favorites. And then, of course, I read a lot of other stuff. Call of the Wild was my first book that I read when I was 8 and fell in love with, Jack London's Call of the Wild. And then, so I got into Kerouac, and the whole On the Road and, all that stuff, Big Sur, and that's why I went up to San Francisco, and I was looking for that world, which of course was gone, but I was trying to recreate something of that world, that sort of literary world that I lived in my head. I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. I dropped out of high school. My parents, of course, lost their minds. We came from a middle-class neighborhood, a middle-class family. I mean, nobody dropped out of school. I think my school was 96% white. And I just felt like, man, this is not it. There's a having read about a bigger world, and I hadn't never left the country when I was 16. I'd been to upstate New York, where my grandparents live, and I'd been to Alabama, where my other grandparents lived, and that was it. So going to India really changed my life, you know. First of all, like getting that part, dropping out of high school, studying for however long it couldn't have been very long, 6 months. And then getting this part in this Bollywood film, and going on this adventure, you know, first across the country with an RV and a little van full of an Indian crew. It was all Indians and me, and there was one white driver who drove the van. And they brought their own cook, you know, and it was my first experience of another culture. That was fascinating. You know, we drove all the way to Orange County in that RV. We slept in an Indian church in Orange County on the floor. We drove back, went to St. Louis, and I wanted to keep the adventure going, you know. That's why I didn't go to LA right away. I went up to San Francisco and got into a lot of trouble, you know, which gave me a lot of experience, you know. Writing a lot, you know. I've always written a lot, and
because you don't watch TV, right?
I don't watch TV. No.
Do you have a TV here?
I have a projector that I watch films on. It's a movie screen.
So you don't watch whatever's on?
I don't watch any TV. My kid watches a little bit, you know, but she's a kid. It's all right.
So you don't even watch HBO or anything?
No, I don't watch TV. I just, you know, I mean, look at all these movies that there is to watch. I'm busy, you know. I mean, there's so many films. My God, it's like, you know, when I got into it a little late, I wasn't, you know, watching films when I was watching films as a kid. But then when I left home at 16, I mean, there's a whole sort of 10-year period where I didn't have the money for a television, and you know, going to the movies was, if you could sneak in, you could go to the movies, which we did quite a bit. The Egyptian theater was great for sneaking into before they, you know, now you probably can't sneak into it, but I got locked in there one night where we snuck in the theater and watched the film, and then we were hanging out, and then got locked in. So we spent the night at the Egyptian one night eating popcorn. But so I've loved film, but but now I'm just trying to catch up on all the films. You know, I think I'm up to the 50s now, France. I'm looking at all the French films.
So when you first started falling in love with the idea of acting and possibly getting into movies, you never really looked up to any certain movie star. You just Ralph Tabakin. Ralph Tabakin, I said, you know, this acting thing's pretty cool, like, and Ralph said, you know, I think you could do that. You know, you got talent on the stage. You're kind of awkward, and your hair's always in your face, and you don't know how to walk. He fashioned this rope with 2 hoops on the ends of it. He hang it on the stage on a nail, and every time I went up on stage to do a monologue or a scene, I'd have to take this rope off the nail and put 1 foot in each rope. And he said that would teach me how to walk. And he was a great guy. You know, all the old school sort of vaudeville, real theater stuff. You know, he was just nuts and bolts. And anyway, Ralph told me to go and rent films starring Montgomery Clift. He said, you want to see film acting? I want you to go and watch Montgomery Clift. I can see how you fit into that mold, you know, from his eyes.
Wow, that's nice. Monty became a big hero for me. James Dean, Brando, Monty, and you know, of course, the other guys.
Clift was before Dean, though, you know, and he's doing.
Yeah. No, Clift was, you know, I mean, that's who Dean was imitating. Was Clift. And a little Brando, but you know, then I got into John Garfield. Anyway, there's so many terrific actors, and but that was what sort of started me on that train. You know,
I heard you say how particularly, I think now, with you prepping your Western and so forth, you like the strong, silent type like your dad. That's the sort of man that you look up to. But your teacher was perhaps one of the most important influences.
Ralph was, yeah. I mean, Ralph was...
Because I know you keep his memory alive by telling his story all the time.
Ralph was the guy who was a real teacher, He was also a terrific actor, and he was a character actor, and his professionalism, his craftsmanship, the way he demystified the whole thing. And really, for me, it was a really big leap to go from Maryland to Hollywood. I still don't really feel like I fit in that, and I'm not comfortable with a lot of it. But
because it's not like you were doing theater in Baltimore either, yet.
Right.
You just came out here and.
That's right. Although I did used to put Baltimore Playhouse on my resume.
Mm-hmm.
I, padded my resume with some fake plays when I first came out here.
See, the thing that's interesting to me, I mean, I've followed all your movies, and I've heard some of your early stories and so forth. But when I really dug in, what's interesting is that, see, you're a Hollywood leading man, good looking, and it's easy for people to think that, oh, he got Deep Blue Sea, and from there it leads on. But because you came here so early, you were really kicking it around for 7 years and running out of money, no place to sleep.
Yeah.
But, in the end, just doing work in the theater and that kind of stuff.
We built a theater over here on Heliotrope and Melrose. We just got some friends together and we rented a storefront and we built a theater in there and we just started doing plays. And we just did play after play after play, sometimes to one person in the audience. And all those guys had a real passion for what we did. But one thing I noticed was most of them had something else, that they were good at. But I really didn't, nothing that was going to make me any money. So I didn't have a backup plan. I mean, it was, and there were a few nights where I'd lay in bed, my little cot, and think, what the hell am I doing?
Right. But that whole thing about that out of context quote that you said about people started making headlines about Thomas Jane was a young gay hustler and all that, like James Dean or whatever. But that was just a quote you put. They, you just take that quote. It could easily be, second, third generation. But you've cleared it up. But basically, when a young man comes here, 16 years old, hasn't even finished high school, you don't have a lot of skills to fall back on, other than manual labor, and you're probably not even old enough for that.
No, I couldn't do any of that.
Except for playing music on the
We were street kids. I got a guitar which is sitting over in that corner, and I'd sit on the sidewalk, and people would pay me to go away. I would make a lot of noise. I didn't know how to play it, but I learned. Some other kids sort of would teach me a chord here and a chord there, and and all that. And also, I was a kid. I experimented with everything. I wanted to try everything. I wanted to. I didn't want to leave anything out. I've always kind of had that
edginess,
fascination with life. Like the whole thing is. You never want to put any limitations on who you are. As I still don't know who I am, and I don't like borders. I don't like nationality. I don't like countries. I don't like how we identify. I mean, it all comes from fear. The world is a terrifying place. It can be. So we try to compartmentalize and create rules for ourselves that should make everything go smoothly, but it just for some reason isn't working out. the more rules we have, the more screwy everything gets, and the more people get killed. You know.